I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to start shooting our videos from our new home on St. Simon's Island, Georgia. This place is so beautiful that what we're going to do, besides showing you how to make delicious desserts, is to show you some of our favorite places on the island. And at the top of our list, of course, is the beach. This is where we walk Baxter every day. And while he loves the beach, he's still a little tentative about going into the water, but he's getting better and braver every day. So this is going to be about our 300th video. So what I want to do is take this opportunity to just thank everyone for your continued support of Joy of Baking. Rick and I really appreciate it. And so now we're going to show you a few beautiful pictures of the island. And when I come back, I'm going to show you how to make a delicious free-form peach tart. Welcome to our new kitchen. So like I said, we're going to make a free-form peach tart. And this consists of a round of pastry, and then we're going to put thick wedges of lightly sweetened peaches on top. Really a great way to use peaches when they're at their prime. So we're going to start with our pastry. This is a pastry that's made with butter, so it gives a real nice buttery, crisp texture. A really easy way to make it is in a food processor, but you can make it by hand. So the first thing you will need is 1 1/4 cups, which is 175 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. Let's put that in there. And then we're just going to sweeten it with 1 tablespoon, 15 grams of granulated white sugar. And then I'm also going to add a 1/2 teaspoon, about 3 grams of salt. I like to use either a kosher salt or a light fine sea salt. I like the flavor better, but you could just use a table salt here. And then I'm just going to process this to combine everything. If you're doing it by hand, then just use a whisk and whisk everything together. Simple enough. And then butter. You will need a 1/2 cup, 113 grams of cold butter. You can use salted or unsalted. As you know, my preference is the unsalted. And cut it into like little tiny pieces like this, because then it makes it much easier to incorporate the butter into the flour. So just kind of sprinkle it over the top. Now, if you were doing this by hand, you could cut the butter into the flour mixture with a pastry blender or just even your fingertips. So what we're going to do now is we're going to process this, not very long, maybe 15 seconds, just until we have coarse crumbs. Just a little more, just check it, because you don't want to over process it. Okay, that looks pretty good. If you have some still, so you're looking for coarse crumbs, if you have still have a few little larger chunks of butter, don't worry about that. That is absolutely fine. And then we're going to bind our flour mixture together with ice cold water. As you can see, I've put some ice cubes in my water, make sure it's nice and cold. Now, flour will absorb different amounts of water. I find with this amount of flour, it takes about 3 to 4 tablespoons of ice water, but you don't want to add it all at once. I find I'm going to start with just drizzle 2 tablespoons over the top, and I'm going to process this a bit and then check it, because we don't want it to, we're not going to process it to be, you don't want it to become like a solid ball of dough. You just want it to, when you take a little between your fingertips, it'll hold together. So just process this for a couple seconds. Okay, and I find least with my food processor, it can kind of, I scrape the bottom around the edges because it seems to clump there. And we don't want that. So I need a little more. So I'm going to add maybe a 1.5 tablespoons. It's easier to add rather than once you've if you put too much, it's hard to take away. So it's better to start with less. Okay, I'm going to check this. Okay, so it's almost there. Now see how it's not I don't know whether you can see this. It's not solid. It's like this, and when I grab some, it does hold together. So that is enough water, so we're good. So now I have some plastic wrap here. I'm just going to dump it right on there, and we'll gather it into a ball. We will have to chill our pastry before we roll it out. So I'm just going to empty it right on my plastic wrap. Less mess. And I'm just going to use my plastic sides just to kind of bring it together. As you can see, the less you handle this pastry, the better. You don't want that butter to soften up. So then I'm just going to form it into a round. Don't have to be too precise about this. And like so. And wrap it. And then I'm going to put it into the refrigerator until it's firm enough to roll out. That usually takes somewhere between 30 to 60 minutes. And when we come back, we will roll out our pastry. So now our pastry has been chilled. So what we're going to do is roll it out. So put a little flour on your counter, because we don't want our pastry to stick as we're rolling. And then if you want, you can just put a little on top, and then I like to lightly flour my rolling pin. Okay, so now you want to keep moving your pastry as you roll it, and roll from the center out. Keep moving because you don't want it to stick. I just keep working it around. So we want it in about a 13-inch, which is 33 centimeter round. Of course, this is a free-form tart, so it doesn't have to be exact. Or don't worry if it's not a perfect round. Mine never is. So you just keep moving it as you're rolling it away. And if you found when you start to roll, your pastry is cracking, it's probably a little cold. So what you can do is just kind of bang it like this, or you could just leave it on your counter for a few minutes to soften up. And then conversely, if it really starts sticking and gets too soft, you could just put it back into the refrigerator. And if you roll and it gets a little odd shape, you can just kind of fix it up. The important thing is to have your pastry of an even thickness. So as I'm rolling, I kind of run my hand over it to make sure it's even. Because typically what happens is in the center it's usually thicker than the sides. So let's keep that in mind. And what you will need is a baking sheet that is lined with parchment, or you could just butter your baking sheet. Now, and I kind of like the ragged edges. You can kind of even them up if you want it like really perfect, but this is free form. So I kind of like if it's not perfect. I want it to look homemade. So if you want, you can use a ruler to kind of check. I'm at about 12 inches, so I'm just going to add a little more. So you can see mine isn't perfectly round, but I'm not going to worry about that. So I think that looks good. So what we want to do is transfer it to our baking sheet. So what I do is I just take my rolling pin and just roll it around like that, very lightly. And then if you had a lot of flour on the bottom of your pastry, you could either just, brush it off with your hand, or if you had a pastry brush, you could use that. And then just gonna unroll it on here. That's the easiest way I've found to do it. And then it's a little soft, so what I'm going to do is just cover it with my plastic wrap and pop it back into the refrigerator while we get our peaches ready. So preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 220 degrees Celsius, and when we come back, we will finish off our tart. So now, for our peaches, you will need about 1.5 pounds, which is about 700 grams of fresh, ripe peaches. Now, I always buy extra because you never know when you cut the fruit. Sometimes it's a little bruised or it could be a little mealy texture. So always buy a few extra. And always wash them. We are going to leave the skins on. Now, some peaches have that fuzz, just kind of brush that off. But this is a great way to feature the peaches. It's so simple, and it really captures their flavor. So what I've done is, all we're going to do is cut our peach. Now, as I've said in other videos, there's two types of peaches. There's freestone and clingstone, and what that means is how the flesh of the peach, whether it clings to the pit or whether it really comes apart really easily. This time I'm using a freestone, at least I think it is. So the other ones were. So what I just do is cut right around like that and then twist. And then you can just easily take out your pit. If it's a clingstone, you probably will have to just cut like around the pit because it doesn't separate very easily. And now what we're going to do is we want just thick wedges, probably about 1 inch thick. It's about 2.5 centimeters. So for this size, I'm just going to cut it in thirds like that. I'm using locally grown peaches because, I don't know whether you know, but Georgia is known as the peach state. So it's kind of nice to use locally grown fruit. So there, I have just put it in a bowl, and I'm going to add like just a pinch of salt, like 1/8 of a teaspoon, just to bring out the flavor of the peach. And then all I'm going to do is add some sugar. Now, taste your peaches. A lot will depend on how sweet they are. And you want a peach that's kind of a little soft, but you don't want, when you buy them, don't have them too soft and mushy, because we want them to hold their shape once they're baked. So you're going to use probably up to 1/4 cup, which is 50 grams. Like I said, you could use more, less. It really depends. It's hard to say how much you need because it depends on the ripeness and the sweetness of your peach. So I'm just going to gently toss it in the sugar, and that's it. No other flavoring. Now, if you wanted to add a little ground cinnamon or ginger or, maybe a little almond extract, you could, but really I love to just appreciate the flavor of the fruit in the summer. So that's so our pastry. Now you want it, hopefully it's not too soft, you want it kind of pliable. And what we're going to do is just kind of pile it in. You don't want it overlapping too, you don't want to pile it. We want just a single layer, but as the peaches bake, they will shrink a little, so we want it really tightly packed. You can have the overlap a little, and then leave about a 2-inch, 5-centimeter border, because we are going to wrap that pastry up and over the peaches. And I like to have them with the flesh part up, although you can kind of mix it up. It's just so beautiful. Well, peaches are just, they're a nice looking fruit, and this really features them, the beauty of them. Okay, so that looks good. I'll use them all. Let's wipe my hands here, and let sugar, and then, so we're gonna wrap it, and then you can kind of just fold it, crease it like I'm doing. If you find when you're trying to wrap your pastry, it's kind of splitting, then it might be a little cold. Just let it sit for a couple minutes. If it does, if it gets too soft and it starts to fall apart, then, and you get some rips, just seal them up. And the reason we put the tart on a parchment lined baking sheet, because if it does leak, then it'll leak all over your baking sheet. So it's good to have a rimmed baking sheet, because we don't want that to make a mess of our oven. So really kind of pack it like so. Because we don't want it, also you want to kind of press it down, because you don't want the pastry to unfold. I've had that happen. Kind of, I didn't wrap it tight enough, and then it kind of unfolds as it bakes. So there we have it. So now what we're going to do is just bake it until the pastry gets a beautiful golden brown. And the peaches, when you take like a knife and just insert it into the peach, it'll be like tender but not like mushy. So, and I find this takes somewhere between like 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, so our peach tart is done. Doesn't that look gorgeous? Pastry, nicely golden brown around the edges, and the peaches, if I take a knife and just insert it, they're still a little firm, but the knife slides easily into the peach. So now what I'm going to do is just let it cool in the pan on a wire rack, just until it's like lukewarm, and when we come back, we will taste a piece. So we're now ready to cut a piece. You can serve this tart warm, you can serve it at room temperature, or I've been known to eat it the next day cold for breakfast. And I'm just going to take a sharp knife, cut a piece. This is very good on its own, or it is particularly good with a little bit of vanilla ice cream. But we are just going to have it plain today. So I like the pastry. So I have a little pastry and a little bit of the peach. That is so good. The buttery crispness of the pastry, and then the peaches, you know, they still have their shape. They've softened a little and released a little of their juices, and they're just lightly sweetened. A perfect way to serve peaches in the summer. So cover, and you can store the leftovers in the fridge, and then you can even eat it cold, like I said, or you could reheat them. So until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.